Who each week we have a chat to Leith Van Onsel, and I know you really enjoy his words. He's the co-founder of macrobusiness.com.au, which is where I get all my economic insights and financial news. It's a brilliant online publication. I commend it to you highly. And, of course, apart from everything else, Leith is chief economist at the MB Fund and MB Super. He's on the line. Hello, my friend.
G'day, Luke. How are you?
Very well indeed. And, yesterday, Leith, I woke up and I had to look at the paper. I'm thinking to myself, at last, someone talking gas reservation along the East Coast. And what you had to say last week, I know you repeated some of that through the week at Macro Business. It really struck a chord rather with our listeners here. And so you imagine that maybe someone is hearing the common sense that you put to me each week, and that might be filtering through to the political class. But as you say, the election would be over if Dutton applied domestic gas reservation in the east. Everyone wants it done because it does the obvious to price. But instead, is it a letter sleeve to the gas cartel?
Yeah, pretty much. So what the coalition said was they want to allow more drilling, etc., for gas on the East Coast, which I actually agree with. But they said that they don't want a prescriptive reservation requirement. They want to have this, kind of handshake agreement with the cartel that they'll supply the domestic market with the new gas. But the problem with it is, Luke, the cartel they control pretty much all of East Coast gas supply, current. And so if the coalition only implements some very loose form of domestic reservation on new projects, all the cartel will do is they'll just shift their assets around and they'll end up basically shipping more of our existing supplies offshore in exchange for reserving a bit more of the new gas. And we'll still end up with this massive shortage. They'll keep gaming us and they'll keep ripping us off. And really all the coalition need to do is say they're going to copy Western Australia's gas reservation policy, do a blanket reservation across existing and new projects of whatever amounts needed to guarantee supply and guarantee affordable prices. Because you can't just do it for on a project by project basis, because as I said, the cartel controls the supply and they'll just shift their assets around. So if they've got a new project, they get the rubber stamp on that. And they have to, loosely reserve some gas there. Well, then they'll just, send more of the other gas offshore. Yeah. And net will be in a worse position. And the whole thing is, the fact of the matter is that the cartel has proven that they cannot be trusted. So as I said last week, gas supply has doubled over the last decade on the East Coast. So they've literally doubled the amount of gas production. But the domestic markets receive 25% less gas than they did a decade ago. And all that tells you is that, more supply is great if you've got a reservation requirement to, so that we get more supply domestically. But we haven't had that. And they've proven that they haven't done that. And unless they get prescriptive and enforceable rules, they're going to continue to shaft Australians. And the other thing that really angered me about this was the coalition said, they want a $10 gigajoule price for gas customers. They reckon that's a big win. Yeah. I'm like, hang on, it was $4 a gigajoule before we started exporting out of Gladstone a decade ago. Mm. On what planet is $10 a gigajoule for gas a good deal? Yes, it's down from $12 roughly currently, which can go further than that on a particular day. But that is still extortionate amount of price for Australians to be paying for their own gas, which is nearly 3/4 exported, mostly to China. So, yes, it's good. It's got a discussion. And the other thing I'll add, Luke, the coalition already has the Australian Domestic Gas Security Mechanism, which is a reservation policy brought in by Turnbull. It's never been enforced.
It's never been enforced.
Even after Russia invaded Ukraine, but the coalition's talking about ripping that up. It's like, why would you rip something up which you've already bought in? Yeah. How about you just implement it? Implement the policy that's already there, and give us cheap gas. Yes. So, it's the usual, typical politician talking out both sides of their mouths before an election, promising, a little bit of action, but not really, giving a wink to the cartel at the same time, all this sort of stuff. Like, I'm on the record as saying I think we should be mining for more energy. I'm not one of these guys who doesn't think we should. Yeah. But it's futile unless there's a requirement to supply to the domestic market and to supply at a cheap price. Otherwise, we're just going to keep getting gouged and we're not going to get a fair return on our mineral resources, which belong to all Australians.
Yeah. Again, repeating myself, but go and buy petrol in the Middle East. If you go and look, no Not everyone would find that as a good place to live, but nonetheless, you're spending 35 cents a litre. Here you're spending, a couple of bucks, maybe $1.70, $1.80. Why is it a third the price there? Because it is there. We've got gas here. It's our gas. The politicians say that. So it should be really cheap compared to what the world price is. We pay the world price. It's a complete and utter joke. And unless, you see, this is the thing, this is a great contradiction of Trump. You might have seen his behaviour this morning. At the end of the day, Trump is saying, I think, I want to stop sending billions to this war where millions of people are being killed. So quit it. And I'm not going to pussyfoot. Quit it. There's strong leadership. Peter Dutton could have said, you know what, sorry, we've negotiated with gas companies before, and I think Angus Taylor had a win with Morrison some years back, even a little win, but they can't be trusted because they go back to what they always did, as Leith always says. And if Peter Dutton came out and said, you know what, we'd like to be able to do a deal, but we're not. We're going to impose a situation where if you take gas out of the ground or under the sea or whatever, then some of that belongs to those mugs on the mainland and they get it really cheap, like the cost of extraction. And you say, Leith, not 10 cents a gig, make it $2, not $10, make it $2.
Yeah, or whatever even if they made us a tiny profit on it. So if it costs $3 a gigajoule to pull out of the ground and they're allowed to charge $4, they're still making really good return. That's a 33% margin. But even $4 would be a good price.
Yeah.
Like that they'd still be able to make a profit on that.
Yeah.
But we wouldn't be getting gouged.
Yeah.
But instead, the coalition wants to do a $10 gigajoule.
Yeah.
Come on,
Peter Dutton, it's not too late. Come on, this is the sort of stuff that will get you across the line. Tell me about this futile race we've got to net zero emissions.
Yeah,
talk about futile things that the coalition has signed up for to an extent.
Yeah, absolutely. So this segues beautifully. So as we know, the government's committed to this 2050 net zero target. We're supposed to have 82% of our electricity generation, or energy generation, electricity generation renewable. Now, I went to the federal government's 2024 Australian Energy Update. So it's from energy.gov.au if you want to go and look it out. It's official data. And just this week I thought, I wonder how much we're actually, of our total energy consumption is from renewables. Guess what it is, Luke? It's 9%. So 9% of Australia's energy consumption. So we're not just talking about electricity and gas, we're talking about oil as well. So just all energy. Only 9% of it is from renewables. And we're somehow supposed to get to this net zero fantasy, by 2050. But the ridiculous thing about it was we actually have a very similar share of total energy, so oil, gas, coal, etc., and renewables. It's basically the same share of renewables as the mid-1970s. So we spent all these billions of dollars on what? And the other ridiculous thing about it is this fantastical net zero emissions is supposed to be achieved at the same time as Australia's population is projected to grow by 50% over the next 38 years. So obviously I would have thought a 50% larger population will obviously require way more energy, meaning more emissions. So, it's just crazy. And as we know, Australia's been busy closing down its baseload coal-fired, power generation. We've shut down about 10 coal-fired generators in the last decade. And this, alongside the gas debacle, has resulted in massive energy costs rises, not just gas, but electricity, because gas, it all feeds in. And as a result, as I mentioned last week, Australia's manufacturing industry is cratering. We've got about 5% manufacturing share of the economy, which is the lowest in the advanced world. We've lost major fertiliser producer Incitec Pivot in 2022. Last year, we lost Quenos, our last plastics manufacturer. Last month, we lost our only architectural glass manufacturer, Oceanic Glass, which made the windows for Parliament House. They're gone. BlueScope Steel, explosive and fertiliser maker Orica, have also signalled that they're going to downsize their Australian operations and shift over to the US because energy's cheap. This is all related to expensive energy. Yeah. And meanwhile, some new data's come out. I ran over China a few weeks ago, but we've also got some data in India as well. The new data's come out showing that the world's carbon emissions have been driven by China and India, which continue to burn coal like you would not believe. So I mentioned a few weeks ago, China's the most significant benefactor of the West net zero policies because we're doing it, Europe's doing it, UK, and all these countries. And China accounted for nearly 1/3 of the world's carbon emissions in 2023, which is the latest data. It's growing at an exponential rate. Since 2000, China's been responsible for nearly 2/3 of the increase in the world's carbon emissions. So China's doing it. China's the largest importer of gas and coal, which obviously a lot of that comes from Australia. So we're busy sending our stuff overseas while we're not allowing ourselves to burn it. China's also the world's top coal producer, so they have more coal mines than anywhere else, and user. China consumes 30% more coal than the rest of the world combined. And here's the kicker.
Hang on. Then the rest of the world combined, they're 30% higher.
Yeah. So China is the dominant coal user in the world.
Yeah.
Like more than everyone else combined by a decent margin. And in the decade to 2024, China's thermal coal electricity generation increased by 51%. So we're shutting down our generators, giving ourselves expensive energy while China's just going hog wild. And it's not just China though. It turns out it's also India. So some new data by a guy called John Kemp from Reuters. He's the one who produced all the China data. He does great, data breakdowns and charts, etc.
Yeah.
And he released a report, I think it was on Thursday or Friday, and it showed that India's coal-fired electricity generation also hit a record high in 2024. And India's coal-fired generation of electricity has risen by 73% over the past decade.
Over the decade?
Yep. So China's up by 50%, India by 73%. Coal accounts for 3/4 of total Indian electricity generation, and its share of electricity generation coming from coal has actually increased since the start of the century. And Kemp also from Reuters also noted that the Indian government's instructed coal generators to expand their capacity, to delay planned retirements of coal-fired power generators, and to purchase more equipment to expand overall coal-fired generation to at least 2030. So, here we are shutting down all our, baseload coal, et cetera, for the sake of net zero. Meanwhile, China, according to Statista, had 1,161 coal-fired generators, India 285, Australia 18. And those two countries have the most coal-fired electricity generators in the world. They're adding more electricity generators every year and adding to their coal consumption every year, while us, UK, England, etc.
Yeah.
Obviously UK is England, Europe, Germany, all these places basically doing this net zero stuff, cutting down for the sake of net zero, while China and India are going hog wild. And, I'm just arguing that this whole idea of it is futile without the participation of China and India.
Completely.
And China and India have worse environmental controls than what we have in the West.
Yes.
So I'd argue that it'd make more sense for countries like Australia to retain our industrial capacity, retain our own manufacturing, to give ourselves cheaper energy, burn our own hydrocarbon energy at home with higher environmental controls, so there's less black dust and soot and other garbage going in the atmosphere, rather than sending all the hydrocarbons over to China or India or whatever to burn and sending our manufacturing over to China to make instead of us. Because it's pointless and overly costly to continue with this farce while China and India continue to expand coal use and expand their emissions aggressively, because they are driving the world's carbon emissions.
Yeah.
And to me, it just makes no sense. It is the biggest own goal.
Yeah, I agree. Macrobusiness.com.au. Good on you, mate. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Luke.
Leith Van Onselen. And can I just say, Leith, we podcast, Leith, please share this stuff. People don't know it. So Australia's going net zero. Can I just repeat 3 numbers? Coal-fired power plants in China, 1,161. Coal-fired power plants in India, 285. Coal-fired power plants in Australia, 18. Seriously.